My name is Abigail Campbell, and this is my Culturally Responsive Library project. I did my spring internship in a pre-K classroom at Stevenson Elementary School, serving students ages 3 to 5. I pulled 50 books from my mentor teacher's classroom library to survey for this project. The first category I looked at was gender of characters. I looked at main and supporting characters, both of which had a majority of non-human characters, with 80% of main characters being non-human and 70% of supporting characters being non-human. There are more female characters than male characters, but more male characters than female supporting characters. These books represent some of the representation in this category. Pete the Cat stands for the non-human category. You Matter has male and female supporting characters. Astronaut Handbook has a male main character and male and female supporting characters. And Curls has a female main character. The next category I looked at was race and ethnicity. Again, we're seeing primarily non-human, and there's more representation in supporting characters than main characters of the books that did not have non-human characters. I think this is because some of the books that did have a non-human main character had some human supporting characters still. There are 40 books that had non-human main characters. Just 4 main characters were Black or African American. 2 books had a main character of Hispanic heritage, and 2 books had a white main character. Box of Text had a Black or African American main character, as well as supporting characters, same as I Color Myself Different in the bottom right-hand corner. Tiny T-Rex represents that non-human category, and I Am Love has the Hispanic Latino main character, as well as many diverse supporting characters, including white and Hispanic. So here I wanted to introduce the classroom student demographics before we start comparing other categories. There are 17 students total, and as you can see, there's way more male students than female, with only 3 female students and 14 male students. The class is very diverse, with more non-white students than there are white students. As you can see, there's 7 total white students, as well as 7 total Latino or Hispanic students, 1 Asian or Asian American student, and 2 Black or African American students. So for the next 3 categories, I will be comparing the class demographics against the amount of books that represent them. In this classroom, there are 4 students total with disabilities. 1 has a physical disability and uses a wheelchair, and 2 are have autistic spectrum disorder, and 1 student has ADHD. So there's only 1 book that represents any kind of disability, and it's only through illustrations. It's not a main character or shares any of their experiences, and it is a physical disability. That book is You Matter again, and I have shown here the illustration of the boy in the wheelchair. A suggestion to add to this library would be When Charlie Met Emma, that goes through a kid who's kind of weary of someone with physical differences, but ultimately blossoms into a friendship and shows how Emma, the main character, is no different from Charlie. So the next category is language. There are 6 students in the class that speak a language other than English. In this case, they do all speak Spanish. And there are no books in the classroom that represent or address their language or culture. So I've included on the bottom a book suggestion for the library called Family Pictures. Not only does it address language, as you can see, it's written in both English and Spanish, but it does have many stories that address the culture. So that would be a great one to add because there are currently no books that represent these 6 students, which is a large chunk of this class, that speak Spanish. The last category I chose was economic struggle or poverty. There's currently 1 student in the class that we know of that is facing economic struggles. It's very possible that there's more. And yet again, there are no books that represent this student. A suggestion I included was Last Stop on Market Street, that goes through and addresses some of those issues, and especially regarding poverty. That would be a great addition. So I wanted to look at where in the classroom there are mirrors and windows. First off, overall, the class is underrepresented as a whole because there are so many books that are non-human. There's just not enough human main characters to represent all their needs and cultures and backgrounds. An increase of books addressing disabilities of various types, as many students in the classroom are diagnosed, and they should see themselves as main characters, not just illustrations. Language is a huge gap here, especially with 6 out of 17 students that speak a different language. But there are a couple cases where there are mirrors in the classroom. There are plenty of books that represent Black or African American students, and lots of diversity is done through the illustrations, particularly in the You Matter book that includes disabilities, many different races, many different appearances, including, as you can see on the cover, some different religious practices. And where are the windows in the classroom? So again, the window in this case is mainly into the Black or African American community. I included curls here at the bottom, just to show that's one aspect of a difference between the races that is represented well and could be that window for some of the other kids in the classroom who don't experience it. And where is the room for improvement for windows? Economic struggle, whether or not there is a student in the class, or if there wasn't, that was facing economic struggle, windows need to be in place for all situations. It doesn't have to be a classmate that's going through something for other students to need to be aware. So topics like religious practices are valuable windows to students to expose them to many different cultures and people's lives, whether it's a member of the community or the class or not. So I specifically picked out 2 books that address disabilities. This first one, Just Ask, represents so many different kind of abilities way past physical, including diabetes, asthma, physical impairment, seeing impairment, hearing impairment, dyslexia, autism, a stutter, Tourette syndrome, ADHD, Down syndrome, and even food allergies. It is a window, it's a mirror to any of those students who experience any of those disabilities. And it serves as a window for any of the typical students in the classroom who may not understand some of these disabilities or are not aware of them or don't know how they affect the person who has how they affect that person's life. It is an authentic book, as the author comes from the diabetic community and knows what it was like to grow up having that disability, especially interacting with other kids. And it improves students' self-image as they can see themselves represented in a book. And some of these disabilities listed, you're not often seeing in books. The second one I chose is When Things Get Too Loud. This one specifically targets, for this classroom, those students with autism spectrum disorder and ADHD. It shows the use of accommodations like headphones, as you can see in the picture to the left side, as well as some techniques to calm down when you're getting overwhelmed. This is a mirror for those students who get overwhelmed by any outside stimulants. That doesn't have to just be limited to students on the autism spectrum or with ADHD. And any child that uses accommodations in school, like headphones, modified seating, or fidget toys. This book provides a window to any typical child who may be wondering or even upset that another child would get to have those accommodations that they might see as toys during school, or that they get to sit in a special chair or get to listen to music. It shows and explains how and why some of these are used. And overall, as I expected from coming from a preschool classroom, the surveyed books were overwhelmingly in the non-human category. Because of this huge majority, there's a gap of windows and mirrors in most categories. The most shocking gap to me was in the language category, because 6 out of 17 of the students in the class speak a language other than English. In this case, they all speak Spanish, yet there's no reflection of their language or culture in the class literature. There's no window for other students to view their classmates' language and culture. The disability was a specific interest to me because it involves more than just physical disabilities, and that relates specifically to the classroom I was in during this project. In the classroom, there are 2 students on the autism spectrum with autism spectrum disorder, which is not uncommon for most classrooms, but they don't often have their experience reflected in class material. My takeaway from this project is to pay attention and make connections with the students, to represent them in their experiences so that they understand that they are seen. And while non-human characters can teach valuable lessons, only true human representation of race, gender, disabilities, economic struggle, religious background, and any other tricky topics is the only way to provide students with an authentic and accurate mirrors and windows in the classroom.